and it is my honor as a co-chair of this task force, along with Rich Friedman, to welcome you to this first ever listening session in Ann Arbor for our community. So I don't forget what's important to say. The task force is sitting among its fellow residents, and we plan to listen and to participate along with you. There is also city staff here tonight. I recognize one gentleman, Howard. Is there anyone else? So I also want to say that although Interim Chief Fannis and Deputy Chief Forsberg have attended all of our previous meetings, they made an intentional decision tonight to not be present out of respect for the fact that their presence might inhibit some community members from speaking freely about their experiences with the police force. And I want to acknowledge that. We task force members are volunteers dedicating this summer up until the 1st of August to completing a job that we were entrusted to do by our city council and our mayor. We have much to understand, to weigh, and to research in order to collectively complete this job, which is designed to encompass our whole community with the goal of increasing the well-being of our whole community. Tonight, this meeting is dedicated to listening, and on behalf of the task force, I thank you all for coming to participate. And I thank the circle keepers who will be up next with that heavenly music, and the scribes who will be recording on both sides of the circle so that we can capture all that's shared. And I really thank CTN for creating this unique format for us. I call to order this public meeting using the official name given to us by the resolution passed by City Council, which is the Advisory Task Force to make recommendations regarding the roles and responsibilities of a community policing commission, AKA Ann Arbor Police Task Force. I'll read the roll call in alphabetical order, including our youth member and 3 alternate youth members. Richard Friedman. Here. Munira Harrison. Here. Monica Harold. Janet Haynes. Here. Sumi Kaila, I practiced this. Kailasapathy. Marquand Kane. Here. Graydon Crapel. Here. Anna Lemler. Here. Lori Saginaw. Here. Cecilia Sorensen. Robin Stevens. Here. Dick Sobel. Here. Lauren Tatarski. Here. Dwight Wilson. Here. And Kazmir Zaborowska. Here. This task force appreciates any opportunity to hear from the community, to be informed by our community, and to be responsive to our community. In addition to tonight's meeting, and before our next meeting on June 21st, task force members plan to attend multiple listening sessions that will be hosted outside in the community. We desire your input and involvement in how to structure these sessions and where to hold them in order to maximize our learning and inform our work. Anna Lemler, can you share an update on the details of what we know so far? Yes.
I don't think you called Anna Gersh's name as being present.
Anna Gersh. Here. Apologies.
Okay, no.
Thank you.
A housekeeping question.
Yes.
Why are we spread out like this? Can the circle be a little smaller, or is this purposeful?
The circle was designed to accommodate the maximum capacity of this room in the event that we needed to
But we could
allow
make
for more people.
sit in those empty chairs at least and move in a little bit.
And not do 2 rows.
Yeah.
All be 1 row would be a much better feeling.
Well, people are choosing to sit where they wish to sit, and I would like to respect that. What do you say, Belinda?
I actually would like for people to come and sit in the chairs in the inner circle. The
Can we
thought was
move
that we
in
would
a
fill.
little, a foot?
And to accommodate that, we can take one step forward and bring our chairs in a little closer if that is
Thank
helpful.
I feel much closer.
Is that more comfortable? That's good? That's good? Okay.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Quetta. Any other suggestions?
It's your circle, not mine.
It's our circle. It's our oval.
There's still 4 more chairs in the big circle over here.
Yeah, there's a seat right here.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. I have to grab it. Sorry, I have to grab a microphone.
Oh,
So talking about community engagement.
yeah.
Okay.
Just briefly an update.
This is such an interesting experience. So for community engagement, so this is a listening session that we are having here at this public meeting. This has been one of our scheduled meetings out of the 11 or whatever it is that we have. We will be holding over the next few weeks in June. We'll be having 3 different sessions that we are still trying to finalize. And so those sessions we're hoping will be across the city of Ann Arbor at centered at the Arrowwood community, and then also at the Bryant Community Center, and then the Peace Neighborhood Center. And so please, we will get that information out as soon as we are able to, and we are also curious to hear how you all feel about that, feel about those locations, and feel about the structure of that. We are hoping to provide both childcare and refreshments so that it's more accessible and that people will show up with families and their children and all of that. So those are going to be upcoming in June, and then also, so that'll be public format listening session, and then also we want to make sure that we are talking to other groups, where other groups that are either working with communities directly, who have potentially higher interaction with the police and with the Ann Arbor Police Department specifically. And so we'll be working with the Washington Interfaith Coalition for Immigrant Rights, inquiring with them about talking with potentially undocumented folks who are in our community, and then also working potentially with a youth group at the Neutral Zone. It's a group of young people who have particularly been having conversations around their experience with police. And again, another group will be those who are experiencing homelessness. So if you have other suggestions, we would like to hear that. If there are people that you think may not, either the listening sessions aren't accessible enough for certain folks, or if you have a certain group that we're not thinking of, please feel free to share those suggestions, and we'll have time in the circle to do that. Thank you.
And just that only task force members and community members will be there.
Correct. And it will not be, tonight is recorded, as you can see and see. Those meetings will not be recorded because they're not one of our like formal public meetings. Instead, they're side meetings where we're just gathering other information. We will not be making decisions at those meetings. And so it's just about informing the work, and we will report back in these more formal public meetings about what kind of information we're learning.
Thank you. On me? Hi, everybody. My name is Belinda Doolin. I work with an organization called the Dispute Resolution Center. We specialize in helping people resolve conflict in a lot of different techniques, mediation being one of them, and circles, as we're going to experience tonight, being another one. The circle process is really a very basic process. It feels so different, though, because it's something that we're not used to. We're accustomed to meetings where people are talking to you or at you or for you, but in a circle, we talk with each other. And I think I love it so much because it gives us a chance to really put our voice in the room, our concerns, our thoughts, our fears, our celebrations, our aspirations. All of those things are welcomed in circle. We use the circle to help people solve problems, make decisions, strategic plans, all of those things. And tonight, we're going to use this format just to have a conversation. It is called a talking circle. I'm sorry, speak up. We will have some components of the circle that Ms. Shirley is going to introduce us to so that we can make sure everybody gets a chance to talk. And we'll talk about the circle norms in a few moments. I just also want to point out that because of the configuration of the room, we put as many chairs in a circle as we could, but that doesn't mean that the folks sitting in the row in the back are not included. So we have to be very mindful that the talking piece comes to you and you have a chance to add to the dialogue. Another important thing about tonight's circle is that this is not a circle to deliberate or debate. This is you having a conversation, speaking your truth from your perspective. Our scribers will be taking notes so that we can keep track of the issues, concerns, and follow-up questions that the task force needs to take care of and be aware of. But I'm not setting a stage for debate. I'm hoping to set the stage for listening so that the task force can hear the community members and for community members to also hear each other. Again, this is your story, your truth. It's not here for interrogation or debate. On your seat, you had a green postcard. This postcard does not take the place of your voice. It's in addition to. So if you're not comfortable speaking openly, please write it down and give it to one of the scribers. Carolyn and Ashlyn can take it, and we'll make sure that the task force members gets it. If you have to leave before we're done, this is a great way to make sure that that final thought or question is left with us. And if we run out of time, and often circles we run out of time, we want you to be able to jot down those thoughts, questions, concerns, and leave it with the task force. So your voice is critical in this process, and we're hoping to set a stage where you can be heard by the members of the Ann Arbor Police Task Force, who's going to give recommendations on policies and procedures to the police department. I think I got all the words in there. With that said, I think Anna is going to give us a little bit of background of how we got to this moment, correct? Okay.
Yeah. So just to give some broad strokes so that we can acknowledge some history and some organizing that's happened, but also so that we understand, and both Lori and Belinda said it briefly, which is that we are the task force that is coming up with the policies and practices for what will become an oversight body of some form. The name of that has not been determined. The responsibilities of it have not been determined. That is the point of this task force, and this task force will be in existence as of now for the next 4 months while we have this conversation with community members and other folks coming up with that. So that has come out of primarily a lot of community organizing and community members and residents expressing different concerns around their experiencing with police. This dates back a long time, and then more specifically, in more recent history, there was a black woman who had been killed by the Ann Arbor police 3 years ago, well, I guess it's 2018 now, so in 2014. And that created a lot of various mixed emotions and also energy from community members who have done a lot of organizing to be engaged with City Council around the relationship with policing and also practices of policing. So we find ourselves here today really because of wonderful community engagement and then also a vote that was done by City Council for the 11 task force members to be here. I wish I had drawn it up, but if you were to envision a Venn diagram, so 3 circles that overlap, the middle circle overlapping, how I've been sort of thinking of the task force is that it's kind of a bridge or the middle circle between the community and also, even though we are all community members, task force members are, but then also the police department and the city. So we have been city appointed, right? We had to go through a whole rigmarole process for the 11 people to be on this, to be selected to be on this task force. So we are not fully, so we have a relationship with the city. And so tonight and the coming months are talking about and creating what will be those responsibilities for the oversight board that will come into being hopefully in the fall. In terms of process, my understanding is that we will be producing some sort of document in like August that will be shared with the city manager, and then that will be shared with their recommendations to City Council. And then City Council will City Council will review it, and then they will see, and they'll see the recommendations from the city manager, and then they will have the ability to also take those recommendations or add different ones or amend it, and then it will have to be created, since we're creating some form of body, it'll have to be created through an ordinance. So that is just to say that we could come up, the task force could come up with all of your wonderful input with a certain type of document or a certain type of framing for what should happen or what we believe should happen, and it may change. And so it's also important to recognize that and for all of us to be a part of that process. So thanks.
So we're going to have some circle norms that will be guided by Shirley Beckley.
Okay, this is our passing piece. So when you receive this,
Could you speak more in the microphone, please?
can you hear me?
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I'm so used to running my mouth, and I used to have them amplified.
Well, Shirley, it's not amplifying it.
Oh.
It's making it go to the TV.
Oh, so they could hear me?
Yeah. Well,
So that it's recorded.
so the rest of the community who's not here tonight can hear you.
Okay. And to let you know now, I'm part of the community. I'm not part of the task force. Just to let all of you know that. But I agreed to help with the circle. And the circle is something that has come from the Native Americans. And this is how they resolve some of their issues. They get in a circle and they talk amongst themselves and come to some kind of decision of how to resolve an issue. So we thought, since the community needs to be involved, that maybe a circle would be good. So once you get this in your hands, it's your turn to talk, and no one else can talk while you have it, unless you want someone to answer a question. Then you pass it. But hopefully we'll just go around and listen. When you first get it, you'll say your name and
How long have you been in Ann Arbor?
how long you've been here and what your interest. You can say whatever you feel like saying. This is for us tonight. This is for the community. So introduce yourself, say why you're here, and what your interest is. Also, I think the task force will do the same. And we want to thank the task force for being a part of our circle. So they're mingled in with us. So they're going to listen to what we have to say tonight and further on. So does anyone have any questions at this time? Okay. You want me to pass pencils?
I was just going to add the talking piece is meant for talking, and you can always pass it. So there's no forced talking.
Right.
If you don't want to answer something, you can just pass it to the person next to you.
Right, you don't have to talk. But if you so choose to, talk. If you don't, pass it and write it on the card, or not. But we really want to hear what you have to say, because the task force is representing us community people. So we need to let them know what we think, so they'll represent us in all ways, okay? I'll pass out some pencils. You want me to pass out the pencils, or you want to do it?
Let's wait on that.
Okay.
Yeah, because we have another part to
Feel
do.
free to grab a
Yeah,
pencil
or, yeah.
or raise your hand and I'll bring it to you.
And before we go any further, I just want to make sure that the community members are feeling comfortable in a circle space as well. And if there's anything that we need to capture or put out to help you feel comfortable, this is a good time to do that. So we've already been asked to turn off our cell phones. We've been told that we're going to use a talking piece. The talking piece will allow every person to speak. If you don't want to speak at that time, you pass it to the next person. It will keep going around the circle, so it will come back to you. So don't worry if a thought comes to mind later on. Is there anything else that we, yes, sir? Yeah, oh,
Yeah, I just want to make sure everyone's clear this is being taped, and while there's no police present, everyone, including the police, can watch this in the future. Just everyone should be quite aware of that.
Thank you for bringing that up. It is being taped. I have to remember that as well. Anyone else? Anything else we need to bring to the circle? Oh, sir.
I'm Andy Stoifer. I wonder, is there anyone from city government here?
Yeah. Yes. And he'll have a chance to introduce himself when the talking piece comes around in his role. Yeah.
And the other community listening sessions we are having won't have any city representative or police representative.
Okay. Did everyone hear that? Future meetings for the community will not have city officials or police officers present.
And it will not be recorded.
And it will not be recorded.
The only community listening sessions being recorded will be held in this room.
The listening sessions at CTN will be recorded. Yes,
I just
Carolyn.
wanted clarity on what is recorded, audio and video?
Good question. Audio
Yes.
and video are in place right now. And they actually put it on YouTube. I went on that station today myself. So. Anything else? I'm just looking around to make sure I don't miss anyone. Okay. We'll move to the next thing, which includes values. So one of the things that I love, and it'll give us a chance to use the talking piece as well, but one of the things I love about circles is that this is and I go to many, many meetings like many of you in this room do, meet with this group, that group, but in circles we talk about values. We set the stage and the foundation for the rest of our discussions guided by our values. So I'd like to use this opportunity to come around. I'm going to give you maybe 10 seconds to think of a word that describes your value. And I'd like for the scribers to record those values in some way, this side for Ashlyn and maybe Carolyn on this side of the room, so that it can be visible and we can be mindful of those guiding words that help us to engage with each other. Does that make sense? Okay. So we'll use the talking piece, and Shirley, would you like to start us off? With your hassle. No. You're part of the circle.
I was trying to get out.
No.
Okay. Oh, I don't know if I can do both. Let's see. Truth is my value. One of my values.
Yep.
Compassion.
Mutual respect.
Listening.
Mutual valuing. I'm not sure if that's value. Does it count?
Listening. I'll say accountability. Solidarity.
Keeping it real.
I think I lost one. Accountability.
Keeping it real.
Solidarity.
Solidarity.
Interdependence.
Friendliness.
Okay, you're gonna lose it. Keeping it real. There was another one.
Interdependence.
Interdependence, friendliness. Okay,
You're doing a good job.
I'll just, look over.
Lacking imagination, I'll double up on truth.
And let's not forget the people that are sitting.
Oh,
yeah.
Innocent until proven guilty.
Love.
Honesty.
Empathy.
I didn't hear that.
Empathy.
Treat people like I want to be treated.
Kindness.
Integrity.
Getting to the point.
Self-awareness.
We get forgiveness for our handwriting. Yeah. All right.
Justice.
Also accountability.
Acknowledging everyone as our neighbor.
I want to double down on integrity.
Double on justice.
Triple on justice. Everything you said so far.
Everything you said so far and keeping it real.
Respect.
Democracy.
Justice and listening.
Sensitivity.
Accountability.
Compassion.
Human rights.
Peace. Peace.
Clarity. That's clarity.
There's a couple of people waiting in the back.
Trust.
Trust and clarity.
Love. Love.
Love. Love.
Marquand, it's coming to you, right? You want to shoot him?
I can really keep up.
I think the F one is friendliness. Sincerity.
Equal justice.
Family.
Family.
Transparency.
See, somebody's being kind. Family, equal justice, transparency, and sincerity, right? Okay.
Forgiveness.
Hope. Respect.
Hope is after forgiveness.
Accountability.
There we go. And I'll add the word dignity. Dignity. I think this is a beautiful list.
Is there anyone who passed who would like to add?
I'll add equality.
Equality. Anyone else? Did we get everyone who wanted to respond?
If you can give a second one, I will add opportunity.
Opportunity.
I'd like to add creative.
Yes.
I'd like to add unity.
Unity.
I'm all done. I don't think it was up there.
Okay.
Unity.
Creativity and unity. Anything else?
I'd like to add community.
Community.
Equity.
Equity.
I'd like to add generosity.
Generosity. Yes.
Sorry, I really thought we were done, but gratitude.
Gratitude. That's the wonderful thing about circles too. We're done when we're done. We move when it's time to move. I've learned to let it guide me instead of me guiding it. Are we done? Anything?
Can I add one more?
Yes.
Stepping out of the box.
Stepping out of the box, and Carolyn wants to add two.
Patience.
Patience.
Is that already up there? No.
We okay now? So if it's okay with everyone, I'd like for these sheets of paper to be on the floor as a part of the centerpiece so that we can see them. I thank both Carolyn and Ashlyn for both writing the words down. The thing about this step in the circle process is that these words remind us of what we have offered to the circle already. So when I feel myself getting anxious and wondering what is she really talking about, I said I value dignity. So that means I'm not going to do anything that will make any person not feel dignified. That's the purpose of the values round. If you said love is the word that you value, then show love. If it's respect, show respect. So this is not just an exercise to warm us up with the talking piece. It is the foundation of the rest of this conversation, and I hope that you all take it with you, the task force, as they continue to have these community conversations. Structure, processes, step-by-step things can always change. But values are the things that people bring with them every day. And we have to be reminded of that, and sometimes we have to remind ourselves. So I appreciate everybody participating. And if something comes to mind that we need to add, feel free. This is our circle. Feel free to add it, okay? We're going to keep moving along, and as a facilitator, I'm always being mindful of time, wanting to be respectful of that. So we're going to do another round at this point, and when we come around, I'd like for you to tell us who you are, your name, anything you want to share, as Ms. Shirley said, anything you want to say about yourself in your life here in Ann Arbor. But I also want you to share an experience that leads you to want change. And I'm going to be very specific with the Ann Arbor Police, because this task force is the advisory group for the commission that will be giving oversight to the police. I'm trying to keep that in my head as well. So tell us your name, how long you've been in the Ann Arbor community, and why you think, what is your experience that leads you to believe that this change is necessary? And would you like to start, Ms. Shirley? Would you want me to go to the left or to the right? I'm going to start with you.
My name is Sumi Kailasapati, and I'm the Ann Arbor City Council liaison to the Human Rights Commission. And human rights has been very much part of my interest because I came to this country due to a civil war that was going on in Sri Lanka, and I had to flee home, and I was underground because most of my political activist friends were assassinated. And after coming to this country, I worked vigorously with different human rights, international human rights organizations to free political prisoners. So that's where my activism in human rights came in. But of course now I'm in city council, so from an international perspective, I'm very conscious of powerlessness. And being in a democratic system here, I also know checks and balances are the way to go about it. So this whole idea of police oversight for me is a basic democratic principle. It's not a rocket science, it's just very basic to have checks and balances. Police cannot police themselves, they have to have checks and balances. So that's where I come from.
My name's Sam Copy. I've lived in Ann Arbor for 43 years, my whole life, and I grew up in North Orange Park, and that's it.
My name is Tim. I've been in Ann Arbor for about 20 years. My concern regarding the police is I have 2 friends in my past with severe mental health issues who have received a severe amount of violence from the police. So I'm concerned about how they approach those situations in particular with a bit more sensitivity and less violence.
My name's Courtney. I've lived here for about 5 months, so simply just trying to get active in the community and assist in any way I can.
My name's Munira. How long we've been in Ann Arbor? I've been in Ann Arbor my whole life. My dad grew up here. He grew up as a black man in this city, and I learned a lot about his experiences. My mom's white, and so I learned from my mom and from the schools that the police were good, but then I would hear my dad's stories and I would see my dad's experiences, and I can remember when my mom got pulled over by the police and it didn't scare her, and I was a little kid and I was like, how is she not terrified? What if something happens? So I'm just, I guess technically I'm called the youth representative, but I would rather be a youth mouthpiece than anything. I'm just here to speak for the other youth that can't.
Hi, my name is Michael Johnson. My wife and I were both born in Detroit. I went to college here, came in 1980, so I've been here for about 40 years, I guess. I have 2 boys who are, well, they're young men, they're 24 and 26. I, of course, had, as a black man, experiences like your father, both in Detroit and here. But as an adult black man here, I've had more of those type of experiences which are unexplained, and that's why I'm here, because, and it's not even myself, it's more about my son. One of my sons was pulled into Ann Arbor Police and interrogated for 4 or 5 hours over something that happened in the community. You probably heard about it. It was the, what was that place called? A thrift store downtown. Resale shop. St. Vincent de Paul was burned down. My son had just started working there. He's a mixed kid, long hair. I mean, his hair, he's like the Black Carrot Top. He's got hair everywhere. He's a skateboarder guy, and he probably looks like, you know, I mean, basically they said, oh, let's bring this kid in, 'cause probably some drugger, skateboarder mixed kid. And you know, it's hard to have that conversation with your son that the police see you as a black man, not as a mixed kid. Especially since that's why we, you know, moved here, so that he wouldn't have to go through the crap that I went through in Detroit. And the same thing is happening all over again. And so my feeling is that there has to be something done so the police are held accountable for their actions, and that they're not taking these arbitrary actions against basically any, you know, black kid walking around. Black and brown people on the street can be harassed and annoyed, you know, instead of protected and served. And you know, I pay taxes in this town. I've had a business for almost 40 years. I keep my property clean. You know, police will roll up the street. They're looking out. You know, I'm on my porch, on my property. I'm like, dude, you're on my street. What are you on my street for? So that is not the world that I want my kids to grow up in. And the state of the world is today that, you know, if you don't stand up and you don't, you know, have a voice, if you're silent, you're complicit. So I'm not trying to be complicit.
My name's Julie. I've lived in Ann Arbor. Okay, start over. I've lived in Ann Arbor for about 24 years now, and I'm married to Michael, and I'm here because I'm interested in this issue.
Hello. My name's Marquand, and I've lived in Ann Arbor for about 6 years now. And today's actually my last day of high school, so I'm really excited.
Congratulations!
I'm here tonight because I've been racially profiled by AAPD. One night, my friend, my homie, and I, we were just out on a bike ride late at night, and we had our backpacks on. And these cop cars were trailing us, you know, for over a mile. And I said, you know what, man, we're going to get pulled over at some point. And so, you know, one car pulls up in front of us, the other one's behind us, and they blocked us off so we couldn't go nowhere. And then they said they pulled us over because we didn't have our bike lights on, or reflector, or whatever it was, right? And we were biking on the sidewalk. And so I said, well, thank you for being concerned with my safety. But then a series of questions followed, such as, you know, have you been stealing from this car and that car? Have you been selling drugs? Are you on your way to go get drugs? This and that. And I'm just like, this is just total bullshit, right? And so, you know, I actually asked the officer, why are you racially profiling me, you know? Why are you doing this to me? And so, you know, he just had this look in his eyes, and he was like, you know what? I'm going to run your name. And he ran my name, and, you know, he just had to look like, you know, I want to find something on you, right? And then we got frisked, and he searched us. And so we made it home safe that night, and I'm glad we did. But basically, I'm here to represent and speak truth to power. That's all.
I've been invited to scribe. I don't live in Ann Arbor, but I've lived in Washtenaw County for 35 years. And I'm going to be as silent as I can and appreciate the fact that you've invited me to be a part of this experience and allow you to express your voices, because this is your lived community.
My name is Jessica. I moved here about 9 years ago for school, and I found the community so welcoming that I refused to leave. I'm here tonight because my background is in architecture and urban planning. I'm interested in buildings and cities. And you can't study buildings and cities without studying the legacy of racial discrimination in our country and the disparate impacts of how we lend, how we sell, where we let people live and shop and go to work. So that's really my area of work, but I don't think it's enough. I have to understand how the forces driving the disparity in our housing affects other areas of our community as well. This is absolutely one of them, so I'm mostly here to learn.
Hi, my name is Roz Tulip. I'm a community midwife, recently retired after 27 years. And I've lived here for about 25 years and raised 3 children, mostly here in Ann Arbor. I'm here out of interest and concern for the neighborhood that or community that I've become a part of. I also have had 3 separate incidents, 2 with the Ann Arbor Police Department that I will not speak about here. Hold on. And I had no recourse. And yeah, I'm here to hopefully have a positive impact.
My name is Amber. I've lived here for 10 years. I'm a community organizer, and I've heard many, many, many stories, some from people in this room and some not, of discrimination by AAPD. I also experienced police violence in my household growing up. I'm interested in transformation of how we police communities and in hearing people's ideas on how we do that.
My name is Miriam. I'm a member of Transforming Justice Washtenaw, and I, like Amber, have heard many stories of folks in this room and not who've experienced violence at the hands of police. And I've been involved, along with a huge coalition of people, in advocating for this task force to be created.
My name is Dwight Wilson. I'm a Human Rights Commissioner. I was the chair of the subcommittee looking into police oversight. I've been doing that. I thought it was going to be for 3 months. Instead, it was 3 years in February. It's crucial to me, being who I am, someone who has had 2 cousins, one first cousin and the only child of another first cousin who were killed by police in other cities, and having 4 sons and 2 grandsons, none of whom live here now, but each of whom visits. And I have the responsibility of making certain that not only my children are safe, but all other people's children are safe. So when I started out as the chair of the subcommittee looking into police oversight, I did it with the idea that I wanted to build a model for the United States, not something that was half-assed, because I have relatives who are all over this country, and I have a responsibility for them.
My name is Janet Haynes, and I'm a member of the task force. I have lived in Ann Arbor since 1971. I have heard the stories, and I have, as a person that moved here from Chicago, have experienced policing in the African American community. I have listened to friends of mine here in Ann Arbor and heard the stories that they have shared concerning policing that they've experienced, either their fathers or themselves, their sons. I'm concerned about this community and how we relate the police department and the African American community. And I'm also very concerned because I have 2 nephews who are young men, very tall, large, and could very easily be taken down by the police for any number of things, just walking down the wrong side of the street. I'm very, very concerned and committed to peace and justice issues, and wanted to be on this commission, this task force, to help lend my voice and to support others.
My name is Paquetta Palmer. I moved to Ann Arbor in 1979, and I've had a number of jobs since I've been here. But when I first got here, I was an activist. I was working for the peace movement, black rights, women's rights. I had a chance to observe elections in '89 in Namibia, as well as in '94 in South Africa. I was really, really active in the anti-apartheid movement here in Ann Arbor. And I'm also a survivor of foster care. I graduated high school when I was 16. I've been on my own ever since, and equality is really, really important to me. When I found out that Aura had gotten shot, it really affected me. I know that a poor black woman is one of the most marginalized people in our culture. And I'm very concerned that even though when I interact with police on my job, they seem to be caring. When Hillard Hines wrote their report, they said, oh, everything looks great here in Ann Arbor, but they're not in High Cone. They're not on South Maple. They're not in these areas where we know that people are treated differently. I think we need to acknowledge that. I think we need to embrace our neighbors and really work for equality and make sure that this commission has a charge to not only be accountable, but to be the forward-thinking community that we should be. We have one of the best universities in the country that is supported by our tax dollars, and we need to have unity between us and the university to have police that are forward-thinking, respectful, and creative. I'm very concerned that we not have another incident like that.
My name is Jackie Hinchy, and I've lived here off and on since the 80s. And I live in a neighborhood that's now called Water Hill, and I'm really concerned about how the police presence has grown since the community has become more white and more affluent. And I feel like the police are used as a tool to push people out, and the community is used as a tool to excuse police behavior. And I don't know how that can be addressed, but I think there's definitely a relationship, and it concerns me.
My name is Susie Kennedy. I'm also a Water Hill resident. I've been in Ann Arbor for, I think, about 15 years now. I've prior lived most of my life in California. I'm gonna probably have a hard time finding the words because this is all kind of developing in my mind real time. From what I read in the media and the press, I mean, we obviously have a problem with not fair treatment with brown and black people and people with mental health issues and any marginalized group. And I don't know what the situation is in Ann Arbor. We don't have the greatest of press coverage, and I don't live in a neighborhood where I get to see what's really going on. So part of my attendance here is to learn what's going on. I have no doubt it's bad. And then also I have, I want to learn the scope of the task force, because I believe the issue is not only with the Ann Arbor Police Department. I think it's also with the white community and implicit bias and doing stupid things like calling the police when they shouldn't be called, and we know that something bad is going to happen when we do that. So I'm hoping that the task force has the scope and the power to go maybe do some education in the community to kind of tackle that type of issue.
I'm Ryan Hughes. I've lived here since 1998. I came here for school. And I'm here because Aura Rosser was killed, and it's 3.5 years later, and I don't think that very much has changed to make people safer. So I'm running for city council in the hopes that I can help do something about this. And I'm here today so that I can learn what it is that I should do if I win. So I'll be listening.
Hi, my name's Greg Pratt. I moved to Ann Arbor in 1994, then a few years later to Ypsi because the rent got too high. But then I moved back in 2005. I've been here like roughly 20 years. When I first lived here in 94, I was on Forest Street and I got into an altercation with cops. I ended up filing an excessive force claim against them, which went basically nowhere. I got out of the fines that they were charging me for the offense of drinking a beer in a public place. And so flash forward to now, I'm a social worker and I work with people suffering with substance abuse, mental health challenges, other myriad medical problems. And a lot of the folks that I work with are largely, I wouldn't say a majority, but a large proportion of them are black or Latino and are targets. I see them as being, and they feel like targets, and it makes me scared when I see certain officers' names on paperwork that I'm looking at when I'm working with them. So I'm here tonight because I think the system needs to be upended, and I want to hear what others think we can do, because I'm really inspired by the organizing that brought this whole commission into life, and I'm looking forward to a better way of going about settling disputes amongst each other.
My name's Tom Blackwell. I've lived here about 15 years. I believe that change can happen, and it happens at different rates for different people. It happens on an individual basis, and I think, well, I hope that the Commission can find ways to encourage changes in the right direction.
My name is Anna. I'm a task force member, and I want to first apologize that I didn't acknowledge the Human Rights Commission. My bad, Dwight, and to other Human Rights Commission folks. Because I also want to recognize that as a piece of the history and neglected to do so. My background is in restorative justice and racial equity work, and I work with young people here and have worked with young people of color in particular around the country. And so I feel very, both have heard many stories, but I'm also close to those young people and care deeply about them. You don't want to go yet? Oops. We're just coming over here.
I'm here to hope that the police can. I'm here to hope that the police can change their attitudes or amend their attitudes towards treatment of the mentally ill, and that's a real issue in the community.
My name is Graydon Crapel. I'm on City Council, and I'm one of the City Council representatives to the Human Rights Commission and also to the task force. My involvement began approximately 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, when I was appointed to the Human Rights Commission. I'm here because I think at the end of the day, what I like to see is the better communication. The Commission can foster better communication, and at the end of the day, no matter what, no matter who you are, you feel you're treated equally and fairly as everybody else in the community.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jonah Copy. I've lived in Ann Arbor about 12 years, and recently taken an interest in getting a little bit more involved in city politics in Ann Arbor. And 2 ways I've done that were participating in the Police, Fire, and Court Academy, and then also in the Citizen Academy recently. And I found them, interesting and stimulating, but I found that the groups and the folks that participated in them were not nearly as diverse as the room that we see here. So I think that's important, and I think it's important to be able to share those experiences and others in terms of participating in city government for everybody. I'm also here, I think it's important to acknowledge white privilege in general, and I think that that which I experience allows me to participate in these things and maybe not be looked at as different or other or whatnot, and I think that's an important part of this as well. So, thank you.
Hi, my name is Kathy Brady. I've lived here for 19 years. My husband Dan and I are raising 4 kids here. And I'm just here to listen and learn to my fellow community members and to be an ally.
I'm Andy Seufer. I've lived here for about 35 years. My experience with the police has been abysmal. Everything went fine until about 4 years ago when I actually had some involvement that required police involvement. And it went from bad to worse. Disingenuousness, dishonesty, stonewalling, all of those types of behavior. And my experience has been it started at the top. City manager's office, city attorney's office, chief of police, post CEDO, and it has not gotten worse. It has gotten worse. And I think that needs to be addressed, please. I think that's, again, it all comes from the top, the direction and the perspective and how much they can get away with. Thanks.
My name is Ace Woolridge, and I've been a law-abiding citizen of Ann Arbor for 52 years now, from Louisiana. And I'm here for 3 reasons. First, to support my friend Lori. And I have issues with the Ann Arbor police that's going close to 52 years that I've been here. I've been harassed, bullied, and I have 2 sons and 2 grandsons, and I really don't want them to live the same life that I've lived in Ann Arbor. I want it better. And when this poor woman got murdered 3 years ago, I've never had much respect for Ann Arbor police, but it got a lot worse after that. You know, you shouldn't be profiled. I've been very lucky in life. I've been a business owner. I'm the father of 7 children. I have 4 grandchildren. And I think that Ann Arbor is a great city to live in if you're white. But otherwise, it's a struggle. I've been lucky enough to make decent money and live a good life, but a lot of black people living in Ann Arbor aren't as lucky as I am. So I'm here with my son, John, and he's been through some of the same things that I've been through, which is a horror story regarding the Ann Arbor police. And those are the reasons why I'm here.
Yeah, I feel like I need to apologize for all the Caucasian folks that have done wrong to a lot of our community. My name is Karen Costomo. I've been in Ann Arbor since 1976. It was my physical illness and disability that led me to Ann Arbor. I had juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. And thank goodness to the hospital system here, I was able to be on the right track. I graduated in 1991 from the School of Social Work, and I'm still working part-time as a social worker. I was living in a bubble for a short while. I support the community. I'm an executive board member of the Washington County Democratic Party, Visibility, but after Ora Rosser, I was attending the African American Festival, doing the booth, and I still have that art of Ora Rosser on my refrigerator from way back then. As a reminder, and I have some other art on my refrigerator and elsewhere to remind where other people have struggled and where they came from. I was really perturbed, though. I went to an Ann Arbor City Dems meeting, and we had a panel about the not restorative justice, I'm sorry, about the upcoming with the mayor, Chris Taylor, present, and Julie Cornos present, and maybe Lori Sagna? No, okay. Well, long story short, I heard then some incidents of police concerns of African Americans that were attending that meeting, and I just kind of really blew my top. I'm going, wait a minute, Ann Arbor is a very liberal town. Why is this happening in the 21st century? I literally looked at the mayor, Chris Taylor. It was an open forum like this, smaller group. But I literally said, if we don't get something started, your vote is going to be dependent on this. I mean, I got out of my bubble back in March, and I've been working on trying to understand even my own circumstances and situations in regard to some unlearned behaviors that need to be unlearned. It happens everywhere, and we might not even know it, so I'm reading and learning and advocating and supporting. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mary Ann Hergenrother. I've only lived here for about 3.5 years. But since I've been here, the killing of Ora Rosser I found devastating. And just the use of deadly force in that situation, I just felt there was something else going on there. So I got involved with the Friends of Restorative Justice Coalition of Washtenaw County. And again, I was disappointed that we had speakers come from other states to talk about restorative justice and how effective that is in policing. And the police commissioner for Ann Arbor did not show. The police commissioner for Ypsi was there, but not Ann Arbor. And this was the second time we had this man, Fred Van Loo, come to spend 3 days talking about policing and different restorative justice practices that could be effective. So I am very appreciative that this task force is being formed. Also, I attended the Washtenaw County Sheriff's education sessions that he had, I guess, last year. I attended all of them. And the use of force was unnecessary. It was just unnecessary in those practices. So I'm hoping that the commission can also look at practices, policies, as part of your work. Thanks.
Let's make sure the folks back there have an opportunity. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Matt Haugen. I was born here many years ago, and I moved back a few years ago. I'm co-chair of the Huron Valley Democratic Socialists of America. I didn't hear the prompt, but it sounds like people are saying why they're here, so I'm going to go with that. I'm here because I'd like to shift power away from a fundamentally oppressive institution towards the people and towards better alternatives.
My name's Sarah. I'm a social worker, and I've lived here in Ann Arbor for about 4 years now. I primarily am here to listen and be able to make sure that this community is moving forward in a way that's productive for people, to make sure that those who are most marginalized are not put at risk in the ways that they have been to now.
My name is Caleb. I've lived in Ann Arbor for my whole life, 23 years, and I'm here because we're supposed to be this diverse, progressive community where everyone feels welcome, and I think it's about time we start putting our money where our mouth is.
I'm Jeff Irwin. I am here to try to learn how I can be a more effective fighter for justice. And my brief story is that I became radicalized on this issue when in 2006 I was on the Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners, and Washtenaw County deputies killed a man named Clifton Lee on the east side of the county. And I had the experience of watching how the dash cam was misused in that situation, listening to the audio from that incident where that man was killed, and trying to find ways to bring justice to the community to the extent we could. In the wake of that, we did form a citizen advisory board, which I think did some good, and I'm hoping that we can have a similar process here in Ann Arbor.
My name is, am I being heard? Yeah, okay. My name is Ben Hansen. I've lived in Ann Arbor for about 15 years since I came to teach at the U. And I'm here tonight and taking interest in these proceedings because I've seen the business end of the Ann Arbor Police Department. On the basis of my experience there, I wouldn't necessarily say that the police are broken, but I would say that there's room for improvement. I've also seen their mechanisms for receiving feedback from community members. Those are broken and they need to be replaced. My personal experience began in 2013 when I found myself the Ann Arbor Police Department's top suspect among all the crimes they were investigating at that moment. The crime I was suspected of was an awful crime. It carried 15 to 20 years in jail in consequences. After 8 days and about as many $1,000 in legal expenses, I ceased to be the suspect. But it was quite an experience. There was a tremendous amount of collateral damage to my family and to a lot of others around us in surprising ways that if you haven't seen this firsthand and been a part of it, you wouldn't see and anticipate. There were businesses that nearly folded as an indirect result of this set of false accusations that got going, to relate it to something that's often of concern to the other side of the aisle. To highlight just one aspect of this collateral damage, the Ann Arbor Police Department detectives were all too comfortable traumatizing minors in long, hostile interrogations under circumstances that are near impossible to justify. So aspects of my situation were strange and very rare, much like a lightning strike. I wouldn't expect them to happen, but a couple of times in scattered events around the country, different places. Other aspects of my situation are all too common. The fact that I'm a black guy with this story to tell, rather than someone with a different set of demographics. I have no way of knowing which one is really driving the show in my case, nor do we, I would argue, as a community. The only way we can learn about such patterns that might exist and begin to correct them is to have a real mechanism in place for these stories to come out, and we start to identify commonalities and look at fixing them. Last thing I want to say, I was alternately appalled and impressed in my personal encounters with the Ann Arbor Police. I saw total jerks. I saw people who got carried away and then expressed regret for what they had done when they were carried away. And I saw in at least one case someone who I would think of as a minor hero, someone who exposed themselves to real pushback from colleagues in the interest of trying to get things in a better state. That's what I have to say.
Ben, we're going to give the mic back to Anna so we can pick up on this side. And for those who are just joining us, welcome, thank you. We'll get you into the process as well. The question that is before the audience is to tell us your name and to share an experience, a personal experience, that leads you to want to see change with the Ann Arbor Police. So you can be thinking about that as we continue around. I just don't want to leave you out of the process.
My name is May Watanabe. I've lived in Ann Arbor 18 years, but I've lived in many places because I'm very old. And I have, I guess my peculiar experience is the fact that I suddenly realized that even though I'm a citizen, it didn't mean anything. After Pearl Harbor, when I was incarcerated with 120,000 other people in 10 different concentration camps. It suddenly, when you are living a quiet, peaceful life, and you realize your citizenship didn't mean anything. But I don't think I realized there are other ways when one does not realize the privileges that one has, and to appreciate them. Since I've become older recently, more older, I I think I have become more aware, more sensitive, and more caring about other people. And I feel that in some ways I was privileged because I'm a person of color, but a lighter color. And I realize that there are many effects that come from the shade of your color. And I've become involved in more things and become more aware about race relations, white privilege, and then at times feeling very helpless about what I as an individual can do. And I'm so excited that there are all these people here who are so wanting to have action about social justice. For myself, as I say, I feel pretty helpless at my age, but I have come to the conclusion that it's only what I, as an individual, person to person, might be able to do something, be more aware that we are all individuals with feelings, pain. We're all alike. It doesn't matter what color or what shape or how tall or how short or and if we could just talk to somebody and understand them more, then we would act differently. And that's all I feel I can do. And I hope that as we grow in this process of trying to understand each other and not just be, because the police, they're human beings. They have feelings and they have, I'm sure, fears about reactions of people to them because there's been so much in the news about the things that have been done. But if we could just keep in mind that we all are human beings, have feelings underneath, we're all alike, we have our fears, and we will respond to kindness and to sensitivity, and hopefully you young people, go for it.
Thank you. My name is Helen Fox. I came to Ann Arbor in 1991. I was hired by the University of Michigan to teach writing. You have to write about something, and so soon my students were writing about human rights issues, and I was lucky enough to become a lecturer in the residential college where I could teach those issues specifically: race and racism, international development, human rights, and nonviolence. I also had the privilege of being the chair of the Ann Arbor Human Rights Commission from 1999 until 2005. And it was this experience that opened my eyes to city politics and how beginning to get an idea of how it happens that in a beautiful city like this, with so many nice people, so much injustice goes on, and yet things always stay the same. And I think that it's not just the police officers who are at fault here. It's the white community in general, and many, many well-meaning people, including myself, in this white community, who are part and parcel of keeping things the way they are.
My name is Jordan Jones. I am an intern with the Human Rights Commission. I feel, yeah.
It doesn't amplify.
Better now? No?
It just records.
Oh, I see, I see. Okay. Understood, understood. Okay. Yes, so I'm an intern with the Human Rights Commission. The issue of policing is really profound, I think, generally, not just in violence, but follow-up. This is something that I've experienced personally. My father was killed not by police, but in Wayne County. And there was never any follow-up. There was no recognition. And so the concern is, how do you change? How do you ask somebody to give recognition to Black lives and to Black bodies and Black people? And so I'm here for that. Because if I couldn't get it from my father, I'm hoping that other people will have it.
Hello, my name is John Woolridge. How y'all doing? A lot of good stuff today. Sitting here thinking about what I was going to say once this thing here came around my way. I don't know, I really can't address the Ann Arbor Police Department, you know, it's kind of like, it's not my character, but it seems like it's more of a national issue than just what, you know, you really can't box that in, even though it is an ongoing problem, but it's becoming an ongoing problem everywhere. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? You ain't missed nothing, did you? Yeah, it's an ongoing problem everywhere, so it does take the people in that community to fix that problem. And how do we fix the problem? We become more involved like you see us here today. You know, the more we know about each other, the more we know about the people that's in our communities, right? And the more about the people in our communities we know the ones that stand out or may need a little bit of help blending in these communities, because I've worked with people all over Washtenaw County, all from all different parts of the world, all kind of parts of the world. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people don't come in contact with too many other people of different skin tones. I want to throw that out there. And if they do, they don't come into contact with these people on the right type of basis, you know. In most cases, I'm talking on a young person's perspective, you know. Most young people have things in common: music, clothes, cars, hang out at the wherever they hang out, you know. It's really no color line there when it comes to young people in some cities. So, I don't know, are we still living in days that I wasn't even born in yet? And he'd probably tell you a whole lot more, but I don't know, I don't want to catch up to stuff that shouldn't be a concern in this day and age, you know what I mean? Especially in some communities, but look what's going on. People, it's a scary society we live in. People really got to be aware. Really. Yeah. Even sending your kids off to school for college. Stuff they see on the internet that they can pick up and learn that you might not even be aware about, that your kid knows. Your kids are smart. Real smart. How many of y'all got kids? Be afraid. Y'all can claim them or not. I know some of y'all got kids. Anyway, you got to be aware. Really. Everybody's not going to welcome you. You got to, that comes along of having the ability to acknowledge acceptance. Once you accept something, then you can deal with it a whole lot better. Can't, then you just gonna keep on trying to figure out something that you can't figure out alone and might need some help with. It's a very open world we live in today. Information and technology is available for us to change the communities and make people more aware of who's in our communities, more importantly. Because if you know who's walking around your neighborhood, you know, hey, there's James, there's, you know, whoever. Hey, you know, it's important for people to get out and know each other. Washtenaw County is not a big area. You know, you should know who's in your backyard at least. You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't mean that in a bad way either. It's like I said, Ann Arbor is a very welcome community. I've been here for 36 years. Went to daycare here, elementary, high school, college, still attending. It's important in this community especially, you know, to push the education thing. Yeah, it's very important. The more we know how to keep each other safe, and the more we know of who we are, just more than what we see at school or the person that you work alongside with for 4 hours a day or 8 hours a day. You know, that can break down a lot of different stereotypes that people have drilled up in their mind about how somebody is just on a first-term basis of meeting each other. You know, it takes more to learning somebody than, you know, just, you got to work on learning people. If you want to change people, you got to learn people. You got to learn who people really are deep down inside. So, I'll stop babbling on, I'm going to pass this here.
Thank you, John.
My name is Rich Friedman. I've lived in Ann Arbor since '87. I've been teaching at U of M Law School. And for the last 7 years, ending just a month ago, I was chair of U of M's Police Department Oversight Committee, which had responsibilities very much like the commission we're hoping to create. And the rules of the committee were not in good shape, so I got very heavily involved in rewriting the rules. So when the HRC asked if I would be interested in serving on this task force to create a commission of this sort, I said, oh, okay, I guess I am. I became convinced that a body of this sort to provide oversight of the police, which is a vital function, but one that can obviously be abused. I found that having a civilian outlet was, I think, has great potential for good. It can wind up in creating greater mutual understanding, and in some cases alter police practices and policies. But only if the body is and is perceived to be independent, genuinely independent in a real sense from the police and from the administrators of the police. Otherwise, it just doesn't do any good. And I fought very hard for the independence of the U of M committee and got into battles with the general counsel and the president of the university. And I left hoping that I was able to be instrumental in creating an ethos of independence on that committee. So when the mayor asked me to get involved in this, I emphasized to him that I thought it was crucial that the commission be independent. My hope is that our job on the task force is to create the commission, as Anna explained at the beginning, or to create the draft of the commission, that to create a draft of an ordinance that we hope the city council will eventually approve. And my hope is that we will create a robust, independent commission that will be able to address all the problems that people have raised today. Our job on the task force isn't to, we can't do anything about those. Our job is to create a good, strong commission, and I hope we'll do that.
My name is Howard Lazarus, and I am nearing the end of my second year where I've been honored to serve as your city administrator. In our form of government, the administrator is responsible for the day-to-day functioning of the city government, to include the Ann Arbor Police Department and for executing the policy that our council establishes for the community and those that reflect the values of our community. My role here tonight is really to listen and to help support the task force in their work so that they can develop the set of robust recommendations that Mr. Friedman just mentioned, and then present those to council so they can create and craft a policing commission that meets the needs of the community.
My name is Judy Foy, and I've lived in Ann Arbor now for 18 years. I guess there's two things that come up when I think of why I came this evening, and one of them has to do with bragging, and the other one has to do with relationships. The bragging part is that I want to be able to brag about Ann Arbor. I think I always have felt very comfortable in Ann Arbor, but there are a lot of reasons why I feel comfortable in Ann Arbor, not the least being that I'm white. I am certainly more affluent than a lot of people, and I also know, having been in Boston for many years and worked on a campaign on racism for quite a few years, a media campaign, I do have an understanding of what white privilege is, even though I don't think of it often enough. And I see and know how it permeates. And I think that this task force and then the commission is something that will help me be able to say that not only is this a great place to live in a sort of superficial way, it is a great place to live in a deep way. Now, the second one has to do with relationships, and I think I always have thought that they are the only answer. Someone talked about earlier that there was, you know, this is a problem that's all over the country. And of course, I think you were talking about racism, and I think that's true. But it isn't a global answer. It's always going to be a local answer. It's going to be relationships that help make Ann Arbor what it can be. And I think that that's what this task force can do. And I'm talking about relationships with police as well. The big thing that I think is missing, of course, because I was in media, is that there is very little really functioning media in this town. And you can do a lot with a functioning media. And unfortunately, we have so many opportunities on the internet with social media that it's hard to corral people and ideas. Anyway, I'm here not to do this. I'm here to listen. Okay. Oh, thank you. No wonder you were so quiet.
My name is Nina Usani. I've lived here in Ann Arbor for about 4 years. Most recently, I lived here for about 6 years, a while back as well. I am a community health nurse, and I work primarily with families with young children who are primarily Black, Native American, and Latinx. And I witness daily how experiences with police violence and harassment impact the lives of the families I work with, and beyond those specific experiences, the fear and the threat of those experiences, and how those prevent families from doing things like accessing health care for their children or calling 911 when they need EMS to take their children to the hospital. I'm excited about this task force. I feel like this is a very hopeful moment for hopefully some really positive change to happen. So I'm excited to be here.
Hello, I'm Ashlyn. I'm a rising third-year law student at the University of Michigan. I am your scribe tonight, and I'm working just basically as a scribe with the task force over the summer. I'm primarily involved in this because I have a lot of interest in understanding how to reform the policing communities across this country. And part of that comes from the fact that my little brother is a police officer, and he's a cop in Durham, North Carolina, and I've heard a lot of insight and stories from his perspective, and also how he has struggled with the culture of his department and how that has changed a lot of his perspectives and experiences in the last couple years. And I have been working as a juvenile criminal defense attorney, student attorney, for the past few months, and getting to know my clients and their families, and working with social workers to improve their lives, and you know, just try and extricate them from some of the small things that happen that turn into big things that shouldn't. So that's my involvement, and I'm just really glad to be here.
Hello, my name is Robin Stevens, and I am one of the task force members. I've lived in Ann Arbor for well over 30 years, 30 plus, and for the last 20 plus, I've been reading police reports throughout the county. I work for the Public Defender's Office. I have since 1999, so I have heard both sides of the story, from the police as well as from, you know, the defendants, about their experiences, what happens. I've had my own experiences. My son has had experiences where, you know, he's calling me at 2 in the morning, Mom, they're searching my car. Did you give them permission? No, well, they're doing it anyway. Dude, I'm asleep. I can't help you. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you know, you're out there by yourself. You got to deal with this. And so I know that there is a culture, and I know that it's something that needs to be addressed. I will say I'm disappointed that the police decided not to come. I respect their decision, but I also think it's very important that they hear and be heard on all of the issues, so that we as the task force can do what's right for everyone as citizens in this community.
My name is Eric Ferguson. I have lived in Ann Arbor for, this is my 5th year living in Ann Arbor. I currently work for the, oh yeah. It's my 5th year living in Ann Arbor. First couple years I was a student, and now I work for the university. And I've had a lot of time to think about what to say, though that hasn't seemed to have helped very much. But I guess I will just say that in thinking of my own encounters with Ann Arbor police, they're mostly limited to 2 traffic stops and a being in the city on game days where there's an increased police presence, and I think there's something to be said about that. You know, given that I'm a white person, and my experiences have been so slight, and hearing all these experiences here, and prior to this meeting, I want to stand in solidarity with folks who have had different experiences and much worse experiences, and the only way that I know how to make a difference is to part of that is using my own privilege to hopefully push back on these systems of oppression, and I think the rest of it comes with engaging with other people, organizations, and forums like this to hopefully help drive and be part of change.
Hi, I'm Vidya. I've been in Ann Arbor since 2005 with a few years off in between. I'm a student at U of M. I organize particularly on behalf of trans people, and that's, I think, the shoes that I'm trying to fill tonight. I'm one of a tiny, tiny handful of trans women of color who live at like a particular intersection of vulnerability from policing, and I wanted to be able to share some of that. I don't think many people here know that Michigan is one of the worst states to be trans in. But the government and the police in particular have a large part to play in that. And then I guess to share a particular experience, a friend of mine had an interaction with police because they were in mental health crisis. That interaction turned into something on their record, and then they tried to change their name, and it got denied by the city. So they're just not allowed to change their name because they were in mental health crisis at some point. Their work also refuses to recognize their new name unless they get it legally changed. So they're just being called their old name all the time, and they're just having a really miserable time of it. And like the police are one of the points of blame in that whole mess.
My name is Sergeant Donovan Smith. I'm a second-year grad student, so I've been in Ann Arbor for 2 years. I've been doing political prisoner and anti-racist organizing for many years. Before coming to Ann Arbor, I'm in a collective called Cause. So I've been doing some anti-racist organizing in Ann Arbor the last 2 years. And I'm interested in supporting the process. And I'm interested in thinking about not just the ways that we want city officials and police to react and respond when things have happened, but actually to think about things that would transform how the city is governed and how the police operate altogether, so that we wouldn't be in the position of reviewing terrible cases.
My name is Dick Sobel. I'm a member of the task force. I've been living in Ann Arbor since 1991. You're going to have to figure out how many years that is. I came here because I got married. I have 4 children. The oldest is 50, the youngest is 32, and I'm a lawyer. My work has been mainly around civil rights issues. I have represented prisoners who have been sexually assaulted, both women and boys, in prison. And as a result of those assaults, I have been involved in that litigation. What brought me to the task force was a number of years ago, this city was paralyzed by a serial rapist. And some of you who have been here may have remembered that. But there was a serial rapist that the police could not catch. They tried, couldn't catch the person. And so they decided, because the identity of the serial rapist was a black male between about 25 and 35. And what the Ann Arbor Police Department did is it decided it was going to stop every single black male between 25 and 35, ask them where they were on a particular night, and if they couldn't provide a verifiable answer, tell them this: you can come down to the police department and you can have us draw blood, because we have the DNA of the serial rapist, and if it doesn't match the DNA, we will give you a card that you can then show any policeman that arrests you hereafter, and they will then let you go. If you don't agree to give your blood, then you will be stopped, and you'll be brought down to the police department and asked the same thing again. In addition to that, your blood sample will be sent to the state, and the state will have a record of all of your DNA. We went to the police department and tried to explain to them, at least from some perspective, that this approach was constitutionally infirm, that you couldn't do this kind of thing, that not every black male could be a suspect. I couldn't imagine if the identity was a white male in a tie and jacket, that they'd be stopping everybody on Main Street who was white that had a tie and jacket. But the police department did not have the ability to self-correct. And so we were only left with litigation. And as a result of that litigation, the practice changed, the people were able to get their blood back, and we went back to a different system. When the police commission became an idea, and they were going to accept applications, I thought to myself, would the community be better if people had a place where those things could be heard in an open, transparent way? And if that could, would the practice have stopped more quickly when the police just couldn't see through what they were doing? And that's why I applied, and I'm appreciative that I was put on the task force.
My name is Anna Gersh. I'm a lifelong Ann Arbor resident, and I'm a member of the task force. My professional skills include secondary level alternative education, program evaluation, and professional learning. A close friend suggested that I apply to be on this task force, and I felt that a community the size of Ann Arbor, with its fundamental desire to embrace progressive change and wide variety of potential resources, would be a great place to create a model police oversight commission. When I started this work, I had no idea what it entailed. In the last 2 weeks, I've come to appreciate the complexity of the task, and am grateful to have the expertise of all the task force members, but especially Rich Friedman for his practical and applied experience working with the required legal language, and Lori Saginaw for her skills as an endlessly patient diplomat. Their skill sets represent the two equally essential sides of the coin we're working with. I'm excited to continue my listening and learning tonight and to contribute to this important community project.
Hi, I'm Lauren Tatarski. I'm also on the task force, and I'm really interested in these community listening sessions to hear everyone's input, and I'm also appreciative of things like Transforming Justice Washtenaw sent a number of recommendations specific to what we could do as a task force that were very detailed and very helpful. So I just want to encourage you that if you do have ideas specifically for what would make the commission work for you, that you please feel free to share them with us. For me, that's a big part of this, is hearing your stories, hearing your experience, and then also having you give us your ideas, if you have any, about what would make this work for you as an individual in the community. And if you just have your story to share, we want that too. But I am super interested, and I feel it's essential that this is clearly will only work if it is something that the community can communicate with and feel safe with and feel honors your concerns, our concerns. And so I'm really grateful for everyone coming here tonight and look forward to the other community listening sessions.
Hello, my name is Kazmir Zaborovska. It's a mouthful. I go by Kaz. I've lived in Ann Arbor my whole life. I'm 16 years old. I'm a sophomore at Washington National High School, and I've had numerous experiences with police and community as well. And so that's why, oh yes, I forgot to mention, I'm also a youth member of the task force. But yeah, I'm glad, you know, that the task force and the commission will be working with the community and the police, because as it was said a couple times before, you know, this isn't just a police issue, this is a community issue. And community is a word that encompasses police and civilians, you know, citizens. So I think it's important to remember that and to understand that. I've had run-ins with both sides, you know. I'm a very law-abiding citizen. You know, I never committed a crime, and yet I've been stopped by police so many times. I've had the police called on me so many times. An example I'll give is I was walking out of my home, and I'll mention that I live in a more affluent neighborhood. I have the privilege of, you know, being more economically. I have more economic backing than a lot of people with my color of skin, and so, you know, I take that into account. But because of that, you know, the neighborhoods I grow up in are mostly predominantly white, and that is a problem. For instance, one night I was walking out to my car to retrieve something, and I believe it was a flashlight, and my neighbor called the police on me, thinking that I was breaking into my car. And so later that day, while I was walking on the street with my friends, you know, I believe it was 3 black kids and 1 white girl. So it didn't look good at all. And we were pulled over, I believe 5 police cars, and...
You were walking?
Yeah, we were walking. And the police said that there were reports of break-ins of car theft. And when I asked for them to be a little more specific, you know, where it happened, because I wanted to know whether or not it was some kind of mistake, they wouldn't give me that information. And so then I pulled out my license. You know, I gave a complete description of my vehicle. And after about 20 minutes of talking to them, they finally let me go. But yeah, again, it's a community thing and a police thing. And I'll give just one more example. Probably the worst one, I was at a speedway, the Speedway on Stadium, with my two black friends, Dallas and Matt. And, you know, we were buying, I believe I bought a Sprite, Matt bought a Mountain Dew, Dallas also bought a Sprite. And as we were walking out, I just paid. I just picked up my receipt, and as we were walking out, the manager came out and stopped us and claimed that there were reports of people stealing drinks, and they were black kids wearing hoodies with backpacks. And here I am with my Louis Vuitton backpack, and my Sprite is hanging out, and she asked me where the Mountain Dew is, and I'm very confused because I bought a Sprite. So I explained to her, well, ma'am, I'm sorry, but I bought a Sprite. And she said, no, I know you have a Mountain Dew. And so I continued to insist that I did not have a Mountain Dew in my bag. And the manager made us put our bags on the ground and empty out the contents of our bags, and threatened that if she saw us again, she would call the police, although she had no evidence that we had stolen anything. I showed her the receipt, and the cashier didn't get involved. But yeah, there's implicit bias. There are police issues as well, and I think it's important to keep in mind that this is an issue that encompasses all of us, and it's community is police and civilians. Thank you.
I'm Lori. I want to appreciate all of the honest sharing in this room tonight. I want to appreciate the values that were called out. It describes the community that I would like to live in. I like the image of the box because I think that the box is such an important metaphor to what has been talked about. I think that the institution of policing is in a box. I think that the manufactured notion of race is in a box. I think that segregation puts us all in boxes. I think class does the same. I think you're the one that said, let us step out of the box. I think a lot about the difference between intent and impact. I think what we've talked about tonight and shared is about impact. And I don't think intent justifies impact. Impact is real, it lasts, it damages, it gets passed on for generations. What I would like to do on this task force and why I wanted to work on it is to help us to examine our intent so that we can embrace all of the values on the flip chart. We don't have very much time to do this, but we have a very, very strong team, and we have the help of all of you, and we will continue to receive your help. When the commission is created, it's going to struggle. It's going to need continued help from the community to understand its role so that it can grow into the body that we all hope it to be, so that we can brag about it. The fact that we have this opportunity to create this body is an amazing intervention. We are at an important crossroads, and we all have a responsibility to maximize this opportunity. It's a collaborative, collective endeavor that is exactly like the Venn diagram that Anna described at the beginning, where community and our police and our government all intersect with the commission. We can be joined by that. We can all become better with its help. That's why I'm here.
My name is Shirley Beckley, and I guess I'm your senior member. I've been here 75 years. I've lived here all my life, grew up here, and I've seen a lot. I have 3 children and several grandchildren and several great-grandchildren and 1 great-great-grandchild. So I want them to be safe. Most of my grandchildren are male, so I worry about them a lot. I'm happy that we have come this far and that we do have this task force. And I hope that it will create the commission that I, as a person in this community, am looking for. We need something. And I'm not saying our police are all bad, but some of them need some type of discipline or some type of training, or maybe both. I don't know. Well, I do know, but I don't have time to talk about it. But I do believe that it can work, and I do believe we can work together. I'm just hopeful that our police will do some things in the community with the kids and with their families so they'll get to know them. When I was a little girl, we knew them. They were on horses or walking the beat downtown, and we could talk to them. And I hope we get back to that point. I've seen too much. I've had to leave this town for my children's safety. I came back just to defy them. And so I hope they get tired of me, but I love them in spite of everything. I just know we can do this together. And I just want you to know, it's so wonderful to see all of you here and to have the community and our government and the Human Rights Commission and the City Council people here. Because I just think that this is something we have to do together. And it is going to take a lot of work, and it is going to take a lot of mind power, and it is going to take a lot of forgiving on some of our, even mine. I got to forgive. And one part of my heart is ready, and the other part says, no, don't you forgive them. But because of my upbringing, I got to learn how to forgive. It's easy. It's easier for us to forgive. But I just want to say that I'm glad that we're here tonight. I'm glad I'm here tonight, that I can talk to our city officials and hope that you listen. I've said this to you before. We've got to use our hearts more than our heads so that we can understand what's going on. I know we have a good police force, but we got some bad eggs in there. and we got to do something about it. And I hope that this community commission will be, it's not going to be a commission that goes after cops. I think it's going to be a commission that people can come to us with concerns and we can figure out what to do to make it a better place. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for so far. We still have a few people who came in late, so I want to give them an opportunity too. But I just also want to acknowledge the time. It's about a minute or two after 9 o'clock. So Anna, for those who just joined us, I want to give them the opportunity to add their voice to the conversation, and then we'll see how we can pivot to move to the next step, if that's okay. So I'll give you the talking piece, and I know Angela, Ms. Bassett can ask Lori a question. Oh, okay. Can I give you this talking piece? No? Anyone over here? You want to say something? Yeah, here.
Yeah, let me see what I want to say. Oh boy, what can I say?
Was your experience and why we want this to move forward with this task force?
You want my experience?
That's what we're sharing.
With the Ann Arbor Police Department?
Yes.
I'd rather not say, because I'm past that, you know. So I said, yeah, I'm past all that. I hope I am, you know, and for whatever reasons they pulled me over for in the past, I hope they passed that too. But one thing I did want to say, you know, is if y'all would like to look at the box of what your community, right? You can look at the box of your community. What's outside of that box? The world. The world is outside that box. I think as people in this community, we should prepare our kids and ourselves to get outside that box, because it's going to happen one day. Sooner for some people than others. Some people will go off to college, some people going to stay here to college. Some people don't even want to send their kids to college anymore because of what's going on. Just like I said, we can learn a lot from what's going on in other parts of the world on how to fix our community than just throwing opinions out there on our own personal opinion on Ann Arbor Police Department. It's almost sounds like a waste of time to me, because it's not going to fix anything. If there's whatever it is people think is need to be fixed. But yeah, outside that box is the world. If y'all want to think outside that box, look and see what's going on in the world. Because if you can't fix a local problem, how are you going to fix a global problem when it's here? And it's already here. Everybody has the internet. You can reach different parts of the world from these little devices that you're working on now. So if it's such a problem locally, you know, it's a huge problem. Don't get me wrong. It's a very big problem. But at the same time, look at what's going on in the world. You got to be prepared for that. If we can't fix these problems that's going on that's so decaying, how are we going to be able to fix these problems that's going to happen? You know, what kind of good people are my kids going to be able to depend on? You know, and in my own community. You know, once I get a little older, you know, whose house are they going to be playing at that I know or don't know? You got to be prepared. I did have one question for the young man here. You said this was your last day at school. Did you graduate?
We graduate next Thursday.
Okay, good. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I know a gentleman over here. Yeah, yeah.
I don't know if I can hold this and set my timer. I'm going to start a 3-minute timer because I'm used to that time. But my name is Jeff Hayner. and I've spent many 3 minutes down at City Council advocating for what we see here before us, a body to be like this, to be independent, and to be of, by, and for the people, which is so important. So I'm glad that it worked out like this, and it's great to be here. I wanted to come down here and listen to hear what everybody had to say. And like many people who are out there in the world and busy and have gone through youth and now are a little older, but be that as it may, I've been on the wrong side of the law in the past, and I even had a situation many years ago here in Ann Arbor, and listening to people talk about how they recognize that they had privilege, and my privilege at the time when I was accused of a crime was that I had always been a conscientious employee, and I had done a bunch of work for a bunch of people who could refer me to someone to help me out. And I was able to kind of trade the good work I had done in the past for some good advice. And I saw immediately that it would be all too easy for someone who didn't have some place to turn to come out of the wrong end of that. Too easy. And when I've had other people who have been in like the Washington County Jail, and you go in there and you see everybody who's in there and you think, well, that's really curious. Like, I can't believe that these are the only people that are committing crimes in this town. Or you give them, another thing that activated me is where you want to give somebody some money in the county jail so they can get some socks or something, and then you realize that the sheriff's going to take their money and pay off their court costs instead of buying them the socks. And that's just wrong. It's a disgusting violation of the trust that we have with our public bodies. And so it's things like that, living things like that, and being in communities that suffer under, policing, that suffer with policing issues has really opened my eyes to it. And I've long advocated to get the police back on the streets, to get them walking the beat. Not saying we need more, we need better. And I have a lot of downtown customers, and I don't know why they don't open the Maynard substation again so they can be down there, so they can get to know each other in the community, not busting heads, but being the people that they are. And I know that also that not one sworn officer lives in the city limits. So that talks to what kind of community we are. They can't even afford to live here. It's not even aspirational for our neighbors to be law enforcement agents. That's just terrible to me. So we are a privileged community. And I spent the whole last weekend down with another community that I'm a part of, which is the Detroit Techno community. And I always felt like nobody cared about anything but the music in that group, and you could have any kind of friend at any age, any race, whatever you wanted to say. It didn't matter because we were all in it for the music, and we all felt safe in that umbrella of that community. And the idea that there's people even in this room that can't feel that same safety in the community where they live and pay taxes is beyond me. And so I hope I can tell that good things are going to come from this. And so I wanted to come down here and be a part of that and say that and thank everyone. And also that for those of you who don't know, in the First Ward, that Sumi's not going to be with us anymore in a city council position. And so I'm actually running for that seat. And I know that your budget is your values. And I also want to make sure that when this thing moves forward, that you guys have the resources that you need to take this to fruition, because it's so important. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, sir, you joined us. Would you like to? No? Okay. Did I miss anyone who had not had a chance to have the talking piece? Who? Jack. Jack?
She wants me to talk.
Oh, well, you must talk then.
I know better than to argue with Shirley. So. I'm Jack Eaton. I represent the 4th Ward on City Council. I want to thank Sumi for dragging me into this, and she and I encouraged the Human Rights Commission in 2015 to begin the process that you're now seeing come to fruition. And I'm really proud of the work that everybody's doing on this, and I will support this as long as it is fully empowered and fully independent and fully funded. So I appreciate everything that everybody's doing here.
Thank you. Thank you, Jack.
Belinda, the person behind you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Hi, I'm Kathleen Summersgill. I serve as a fire marshal for the City of Ann Arbor. I've worked for the City of Ann Arbor for over 26 years, And I am also a resident. I've also lived in the city of Ann Arbor for about 27 or so years. I'm one of the few police or firefighters who do reside in the city of Ann Arbor, and I think that's also part of the problem. Our departments are not representative of the people who live in the community, and whether the people in the community who live here actually want to do blue-collar jobs like police work or firefighters is another question, but there aren't really avenues for them to pursue it, like in some rural areas. And I think that's just something that needs to be looked into. Thank you. Sorry that I did not get this to you sooner. Excuse me. So at this point, we can do one or two things. We can do one more round or popcorn round to get some ideas up. What kinds of things do you want this task force, this advisory group, to take to the table as they're developing their recommendation for the commission? Is that a good way to frame that? You have the index card, so if you're not able to stay and participate verbally, please write it down and leave it with us. And as people are offering ideas, I'm going to ask the scribers to record them for us as well. Is that okay? Everyone comfortable with that? Okay.
Belinda, we also have the opportunity to schedule a similar session to this on June the 12th.
11.
June the 12th here at CTN, exactly like this, a repeat or a follow-up or an extension of tonight. And if there is enough interest in that, then the task force can vote on it and make it an official addition to our schedule. So I guess
so what's in the circle right now is a continuation of this conversation on June 12th, Tuesday, June 12th, here at CTN, beginning at 7 o'clock, and we can pick up where we've left off. Is that what you're proposing?
yes.
Okay. Any thoughts about that? And the task force here would have to vote that in, so they do need to take care of that piece of business.
I'm just wondering if we could see, I worry about asking everyone to commit more time and another evening to this. If you want that, that's wonderful, and we can, I think, vote for that. But I also wonder about just taking 15 minutes to just generate your ideas now. There's multiple ways of doing that. One is that you can voice them now, potentially, we're gonna vote on it. 2 is to document it on the piece of paper. 3 is that I'm gonna create some sign-up lists so that you can write your email and we'll contact you. 4 is through Facebook. 5 is through relationships. There's ways to contact us. So I'm thinking, how about 2, let's do really quick votes with our hands. 1, and the votes are either like 15 minutes right now, and please share your ideas that you feel like are very pressing and that are clear for you.
Is this for the task force?
Correct, for the task. No. So this is recommendations for the task force. Right. Yep, and then the other is to have a second meeting that the task force will vote on for June 12th.
And one does not preclude the other.
Exactly, you can vote for both. So it's just to get a temp check of how people are feeling. So 15 minutes. So the first vote is 15 minutes right now to hear from people what's going on. Yep, that's the alternative, is that we're wrapping up. Yes. So again, there's multiple ways of sharing your opinions. The first way, or sharing your thoughts, the first vote is about doing that just right now so you don't have to come back again. The second is that we can continue this conversation on June 12th. So option A, 15 minutes now, or share your suggestions otherwise. Someone counting with me? Can I have one person who's like counting? Lauren, thank you. Okay, cool. There were 60 people in this room. Awesome. And then option B, so that would be having June 12th, and the task force will vote on that this evening. Raise your hand if you would like, and it is here. Yep, it would be here. It would be recorded again. It would be just like this, just a continuation. Okay. So, what'd you say?
Oh, just basically
tied, yeah. Dang it.
Does it make sense to start with the 15 minutes and then see how it goes and then see? Or take Saturday, I'm not sure people are eager to leave right now.
Yeah.
It would make sense to see.
Yes.
Because if it does spend itself for 15 minutes, then it would be a shame. I'm just wondering if it makes sense to give it a try. I don't know if everybody's eager to leave.
Go ahead.
How do we get our ideas to the task force, if not in this 15-minute session? I hear there's openness, come and give us your ideas. I don't have a vehicle. How do we do that?
So we are figuring out the appropriate email that can be used, but I'm going to have, you can write your email up here and we'll contact everyone with ways to do that. There's the Facebook page, there's the note cards for right now, but we can also get your email address.
What's the Facebook?
It's called Ann Arbor Police Task Force. You can write that up.
Ann Arbor Police Task Force. If you're going to give us your email address, please give us your name as well.
So how about this? Let's popcorn it, so whoever, or we're gonna go in a circle. If you have something that you wanna share now, go ahead and share it. Please, I would request that if you can stay and listen, please do that. I'm worried about half the room leaving and then it being disruptive. So if you have 15 minutes and the patience in you, please stick with us. And then if you need to leave, of course, please do so and just do it quietly. So let's do this. I appreciate it. This is so that, you know, and community members don't have to spend more time than needed.
Where's the talking piece?
Great, talking piece is going over there.
So somebody's in the back who wants
Miriam,
to say.
you want the talking piece? What?
Take it.
Okay, ready? So we're gonna start passing it now. Remember, the person who has the talking piece talks and then the others listen. If you don't have anything, please just pass it. I'm gonna start with you.
Thank you. I'll just read the points off that I have. I'm interested in how people get on the task force. Right now, a lot of public commissions are appointments through the mayor, and that creates a bottleneck for how people get to it. It also creates a bit of a filtering effect. So I'm interested to know how people are eligible and how they get into the pipeline. I'm interested in whether the commission will be dedicating specific seats to specific roles. Will there be a seat for a formerly incarcerated individual? Will there be a seat relating to the immigrant and the Latin population here? I'm interested to know more about that. I'm asking for, if there's not one now, an information disclosure policy from the police force, what data they're using to collect on people and what they store. Just today, there was an article that came out on policing in Chicago, which, like Ann Arbor, had declared itself a sanctuary city, but received a database file from ICE on potential gang members, 95% of whom were African American or Latinx, and hadn't been notified that they were on that database and were policed because of that information. So I'm interested to know where our police are getting their information, what they do with it, and subsequently reporting how they're policing our community. I'm interested to know more about reporting. The conversation about public education is really important, and I'm interested to know whether the Washtenaw County millage passed last year on public safety and mental health. This seems to fall squarely under that, and I understand that while Ann Arbor passed a resolution last year, that it would be that our refund would be spent on climate change, pedestrian safety, and I'm blanking on the third, affordable housing. Thank you. This does seem to fall squarely under that mandate. So, understanding that the budget has already been reviewed for next year, understanding all of that, I'm wondering if it makes sense to dedicate some of those funds to a staff support position or public education. And not making that education optional. I'm wondering if homeowner associations or some kind of neighborhood groups, having it be mandatory if they're going to be incorporated as such that they participate in that kind of education. And part of that education being when we talk about safety, safety for whom? Because a lot of times when people are calling the police, it's because white people are feeling fragile. And I don't think we have enough awareness around that. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello.
I'll just say it.
So Transforming Justice Washtenaw prepared a statement. We've issued it onto our Facebook page, but I just wanted to provide a few highlights here very briefly. So first of all, we wanted to underscore how incredible this moment is and thank the task force for their work in getting us to this moment. And Ann Arbor has been around for 194 years, and this task force is monumental and historic in that light. And we are proud that we've gotten to this point. With that in mind, we had 4 requests that we've repeated throughout our advocacy, and that was that the task force be representative, be adequately funded, be independent, and transparent. I apologize.
You want the task force
Definitely.
to be
representative,
independent,
independent,
funded,
transparent, and adequately funded.
Do you mean the commission? We're using the commission to refer to the group where...
I actually mean both.
You mean both?
Yes,
okay.
I do mean both.
independent, funded, there's affordable, and transparent.
And transparent. We outline exactly what we mean by that in our statement that is publicly available, and we're happy to send it out to any folks who want to read it in more detail. One additional thing I wanted to add, underscore, and encourage is that the task force continue these listening sessions, including with communities at Arrowwood Cooperative, Trotter House, Jim Toy Center, and Community Mental Health, as well as WICR, which is Washtenaw Interfaith Coalition for Immigrant Rights. These are key constituencies who also need a voice in listening sessions like these.
So they can find your statement where?
On our Facebook page. And if you'd like to join our listserv so that you get our statements, which include information about when community meetings like this are happening, or as well as our public statements on issues like these, just come find me and I will happily add you to our listservs.
Thank you. What is the Facebook page?
Transforming Justice Washington.
So I'll be really brief, but I think that the commission needs to do more than just respond to individual incidents. I think it needs to be gathering information about stories like these, and someone else said that, collecting data on patterns, and actually making policy changes to how policing is conducted overall, so that we're not just being reactive, but we're actually being proactive in changing policing.
I just briefly second what you said about, 'cause whenever you have the situation where you have an authority like a police department, you need some kind of check on that, but it's not enough to react after the fact. And so the idea that the commission would be able to set policies that would pass through and transform the way that the police function, or the way their, suggestions to the chain of command that we'd like the police to do these things and the other things, I think that's super important to get out there in front of that and say, here's how we'd like to see the department be, and how we'd like to see them be part of the community.
Thank you.
I'd like the commission to have the power to do more than just advise. I want it to have the ability to do like discipline of officers and and setting policies.
I just want to amplify the suggestion that I heard from Jessica down there, that neighborhood associations, in order to receive incorporation, getting training. Implicit bias is what I think she may have been referring to. And that's one thing that I'm actually I know we're not at the end of the meeting, but it came to this, like, how are we going to change the police? How are we going to change the police? And it is bigger than the police. It's the community too that we need to engage. And I think neighborhood associations, engaging them with some of this training might benefit everybody in the community as well.
From what I've read about commissions such as the one we propose, is that most of them don't have teeth, and therefore they are not effective. And that would be the worst outcome, in my opinion, is if we worked for years and years and years and came out with the same story that we've always heard. We're a great community. Our police force is fine. Anybody who's arrested is a criminal. and end of story. So I want us somehow to have teeth without being aggressive. I want us to have a commission that has influence, that works, that makes change, and I don't know how it's going to happen, but that's what I'd like to see.
Go ahead, Brian. Do you want to share anything?
No, I don't have
Okay.
about
Do you have anything back here? No? Ray, passing it along. Would you like to share anything? Would you like to share? No? 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 Yes? Ben? Great.
I thank the task force for their service.
There you go. Nice one.
Can I just repeat something that Lori said, which I thought was very important, which was, I marked it down, that the commission will struggle at the start, she said, and will need community support to grow into the body we hope it will be. Did I get the essence of that right?
Excellent.
Okay, yeah. No, I thought that was great.
Excellent thought.
Excellent thought. We didn't prepare this, so I just want to emphasize that we're hoping to create, as I said, an independent and robust commission. There it will be. Then it will have the power to look into all these problems, make recommendations, and so forth. That's when community engagement is going to be particularly important, and it's an ongoing matter. And whatever rules we create will have very limited effect over the long term unless there's community support. That's key. I just want to emphasize that.
I'd like to see the commission come to a point. Well, I'd like to see the task force. I'd like to see the task force create a commission that challenges the idea that criminal justice is the only kind of justice that deserves public money, public attention in the terms of our elected officials, and I think criminality is a concept that is highly promoted in the media and can get stuck in people's heads as the only thing that constitutes justice is designating people as criminals and such things. I think that's totally ridiculous. One thing that's been mentioned a few times here is restorative justice and incorporating those practices into our policing, and I think that's an excellent idea. I think there's restorative justice is good.
One thing I want to talk about really briefly is that I think addressing the police can't be everything, and I'm a little anxious about tunnel visioning on fixing the police without fixing white people calling cops for no reason, or without creating some sort of public service so that people in mental health crisis can call someone who isn't the cops, and who is actually trained in handling mental health crisis without generating arrest records. I think there's a lot of things to fix that intersect with the criminal justice system that we also have to think about.
Thank you.
I wanted to highlight the importance of the task force thinking about civilian review boards historically, in part because, as a number of people have pointed out, what the task force is attempting to do could be quite transformational for Ann Arbor, but also set an example in the United States. A good example, but I'm sure there are many more, is Philadelphia. Philadelphia had the first police review board in 1958. And the goals, at least initially, were to establish a way to essentially improve communication between police and civilians. This is an ongoing way in which these civilian review boards are constructed. The police review board was sued repeatedly by the Fraternal Order of Police in Philadelphia, and then eventually disbanded in the 1960s, the late 1960s, under Mayor Tate. And then, if I'm correct, Police Commissioner Rizzo was in power in the 1970s with no police. So basically, it was put back into the police force. By the 1990s, there were civil rights cases, the federal government. There were a number of reports that recommended civilian review boards all over the country because of civil rights violations. The review board was brought back to Philadelphia in the 1990s after the MOVE bombing and a number of other really serious violations. What's interesting, though, is if you look at recent reporting, there's been a lot of good reporting on BuzzFeed about NYPD, but there's reporting about Philly. You can see that there's almost no disciplinary action being taken by recommendations by review boards in most cities in the country. So if Ann Arbor is going to do something that's really transformative, then we need to understand historically all these, sort of have a sense of the landscape. What are these case studies? What can they tell us? One of the important things other people brought up is that many of the police review boards never had the material support or the investigatory power to actually run the kinds of investigations they needed to. So they lost civilian support over time because they couldn't do the type of work people had expected of them. So I think looking at these historical cases will help the task force identify key areas that would potentially be different than these past cases. But also I think, to Amber's point and to others, it's really important to think about areas, maybe the task force thinks about 1 or 2 as essentially case studies of what would be proactive, transformative process changes. So an example would be, for example, like it could be policing of youth in Ann Arbor. It could be policing around transportation and the trespass violations. But a key area where it seems like it's not a question of individual police officers, it's the structure of policing in Ann Arbor that is particularly terrible for poor people, for people of color, for vulnerable populations. And that the task force thinks about that as a way to think about transforming policing, transforming the way citizens have oversight over how state power acts in their communities. And I think if we think about Ora Rosser's case as something that is like burning in people's bellies, that it can never happen again, that's important. But I also think we need a larger case study of a structural policy or a structural issue that we can kind of grapple with as you plan for the commission. So I would be interested in, even if it's like a side group, participating in some of this historical work to try and understand what's happened historically in the United States. And the truth is what's happened is very little. The recent reporting in New York City, Philly, and Ferguson, all over, there's a number of consent decrees. Almost anyone who says there's a status quo, there's a good example, there's none. Police departments all over the country are taking money from vulnerable populations. They are abusing people. It's just happening everywhere. So if we're going to do something different, we have to mine through those cases and figure out what model changes that.
Thank you.
I just would like to say that it's very important. I understand that the task force is setting up the Community Police Oversight Commission. But in order for you to do that, I'm going to say it again, you have to talk to us, the community, for you to do it properly. If you just do it amongst yourself, you're going to miss some points. So it's good that you're meeting with us, and hopefully you will meet with more of the community so that you can set up this commission in the proper way. Now, yes, once we get that commission set up, we'll have another battle, but we'll be here to fight that too, to help.
That's it? Yep.
Thank you. I wanted to thank people who shared their stories tonight, especially the ones that were particularly fraught. Kaz and Shirley and Carol and Michael and Tim, for your friends, and about trans women of color. As hard as those are to live through, you do it again when you share the stories. And those of us who haven't lived them need to know. So I just wanted to thank you. I know it's a sacrifice, and I'm sure that you have borne witness to this countless times. Thank you for doing it again.
Thank you very much for that. Linda, you want to close this out? Just kidding.
I think I'm supposed to be closing. So in closing, the task force needs to take a vote on what you're going to do on the 12th. Is that what you need to do?
Well, I guess I would like to know if that's something that the community would like.
So
To have another meeting?
So now that we just shared that, can we have another raise of hands of who would like to have another meeting on June 12th in this space recorded? We will have the community listening sessions where there won't be police presence, city staff, it won't be recorded.
Don't just say they're going to happen. Tell us when they are and where they are, because I haven't heard about any.
Because we haven't set them up yet.
We're working on it. We're in communication with people, so we're trying to finalize the details. And I shared earlier the happening in the first few weeks of June, and we're hoping that it'll be at the Peace Neighborhood Center, Arrowwood, and then also Bryan Community Center. And hopefully that is across the city. And we will share that as publicly as we are able. So June 11th is confirmed, right? June 11th is confirmed for Arrowwood at 6:30. Yes. Great.
6:30 Arrowwood, June 11th.
Okay. Great. So can we see with a show of hands who would like for that June 12th meeting to happen here in this space in addition to those other community listening sessions?
What would happen at that meeting?
Exactly this. So just be a continuation, or it would be a continuation
sharing.
of this conversation, sharing of what your recommendations would be for the task force.
More recommendations.
Yes.
And more people could attend it than came tonight.
All right, and the vote's happening right now, so please raise your hand if you're interested in that. Yeah, Lori, what would you
Okay,
like?
so let's have the task force vote. All those task force members in favor of establishing June 12th as a follow-up to this listening session, please say yes.
I need to say before we have a vote, I'm not abstaining. I'm on 3 different national committees right now, and I can't be here. And so don't think that because I didn't put my hand up, I'm opposed. Or
Well, you can vote for it whether you're going to be able to attend or not, because you believe that there is a need in the community for it. Could all those in favor of it say yes?
Yes.
Yes. And could all those who are not in favor of it say no?
Can I just say something?
Say something. Give her a mic.
Oh, I don't need a mic, thank you. Oh, they're in there, okay. Thank you. So once again, not trying to be the naysayer, whatever you want to call it. The meeting is important. As a task force member, I'm frustrated that I didn't hear enough from the public because we were so busy meeting people. And I'm glad to have met all of you, but I really didn't need to know your name. I really wanted to know what your issues were, and I don't think we got that tonight. So if it's going to be a continuation where we get new people and we're going through the whole introduction and all of that again, for me, that would be a waste of time. It won't help me get to where I need to get to be able to voice my opinion and do some voting and all of that. If we're going to get right into getting down to the issues and what the community thinks, I'm all about that. But, you know, these people can meet me at the courthouse. I'm there every day.
I just want to confirm, there were some comments made this evening that there were hope that police chief, deputy chief would have been here. Since you're going to continue the meeting, I'd like a sense of whether you want them here or not. And I'm also, and I just whispered this to Rich, and I'm going to say it anyway, I live in this community, I'm a member of this community. If you have listening sessions, I think I should be allowed to, I am allowed to be there, and I intend to be there. Especially, just to be very clear, at the end of this process, we're going to work collaboratively to advance something to council. I need to hear the voices as well, and I need to hear them directly and unfiltered.
Did you attend all the Hillard Hines listening sessions last year?
I went to, I think I did.
So, Howard, are you asking this group
No.
to respond to the idea of having the police present at the next June 12th?
So, you know, just to go back in time a little bit, there were cases where at the very same meeting, people asked the former police chief why he wasn't at meetings, At the same time, they complained about him being at meetings being intimidating. So I just want to make sure that as we go through this process, that at the end, those who need to hear what's said are there to hear directly what is being said. And I don't want to be in a position down the road where there's concern that people weren't present that needed to be there.
And I second that, Lori, and I'm the one who said I'm disappointed that they weren't here. Because one of the things that we have talked about is transparency. So if you have one of the integral parties to the issue not here to hear it, the transparency loses its realness. It's not transparent. Now we expect them to go back and watch the tape or whatever when they could have been here and heard it firsthand.
At the end of the process, there's got to be a direct relationship between the community.
Wait, Sam,
There's got to be a relationship between the police and the community to not foster that communication, that relationship as we go through this process, I think is a mistake.
So the benefit we've discussed about not having police present is for people who fear facing repercussions from talking about their experience with the police. So who by being seen and sharing their story might feel less safe out in the community, fearing that the police might retaliate. So there's a reason for that. Now, I also understand the reason for police being present and hearing. So it might be that there would be certain meetings where the police would be present and that would be shared with everyone, and then other meetings where the police wouldn't be present. And in a way, that is part of what the commission is supposed to do, is to be able to be the supportive voice between the community and the police when sometimes that can't be combined in the same space. So perhaps we have some meetings where there's an opportunity for that and some meetings where the police do come and listen.
So if these are public meetings and they are being recorded, I would think that the presence would be fine, but I also agree and accept the point that when you want to have smaller group meetings where, as we talked about even when Hillard Hines was here, people were afraid to come if there was a police presence. And you'll note that there wasn't any police presence even in the parking lot this evening, because that was a concern as well when we met earlier. So I respect that point of view, and I agree with it. My point is I'm not a police officer. I am a member of this community.
I was
think
just
I should be
responding
there.
to the police issue, yeah.
If we're going to work collaboratively, and if we view the community as all institutions and people who live and work here, then I believe that the task force would want to know what the police want the commission to be like. And their input may be valuable, or at least the tension that's arrived at what various sectors of the community want this commission to be. The fact that we're hearing different points of view allows us to consider how to come down on particular issues. My only objection to the police being here is not their voice, but they not come with guns. It is, and in fairness to the police, they were not invited to be here. It isn't that they chose not to be, they weren't invited to be here, and they honored it. And if police... That's not true?
No, that's not true.
What is true?
They chose not to be here.
Oh.
We expected them to be here in civilian clothes as they have attended all previous meetings.
I have nothing else to say.
I'd just like to speak on that as well, that last year in my Pan-African Student Union at my school, I worked with the Washtenaw County Sheriff's Department, and we had a group meeting with the African American students and any students who wanted to join with police officers who were in uniform, and that broke down a lot of barriers where, you know, you can watch a recording of someone speaking, but you don't value that as much as when you're actually there and you can have an actual conversation with that individual. So in that regard, I do believe that that is a good idea to have the police here next time, but again, you know, maybe not in uniform, because I know that for some of those kids that was intimidating, but from what I'm hearing, they're not going to be in uniform, so that really rests my case.
Yeah, these are public meetings and recorded, so I have less of an issue, police officers being here. But I think there have to be definitely sessions where it's not recorded, like whether it's Arrowwood or, because I know there are a lot of African American young men who don't want to, if they are recorded, they don't want to talk about their experience because that's what they have been taught from a very young age, keep away from the police. So what I think the critical element that we are missing here is the power imbalance that there is between the police force and minority community, especially young men. So if they don't feel comfortable, they're not going to come there. So I think there has to be a safe space where they can share their experience if they have a negative interactions between the police, that they don't feel intimidated. So I think that could be a compromise where there are open sessions like now which are recorded and people can look at it and the police are there, of course without their guns. But then there are also sessions where people are not intimidated because they're not taped and they can speak their mind. So that's my 2 cents worth.
I'm all for the meeting, and I appreciate what you said about the police presence here, coming and listening. My problem is, I'm an older black man, and we were taught never to trust the police. And if they're in the house, then you're just going to change your behavior. You're going to change what you say. You're going to be aware because of that power imbalance that you were talking about. So right there, them being around changes the dynamic. And to some degree, I'm not interested in that dynamic. I live that dynamic every day. I don't need to come here to do it. So, and I don't want to necessarily hear that voice. I hear that voice in the street all the time. So I don't want to hear that voice, and I don't trust that that voice is going to be the voice that they present in the street, because I know what that voice is. So they're going to present a voice here that is, understanding and sympathetic and compassionate and all that, because this is the audience. But when they get out in the street, that's not what you hear. I know that's not how they treat me. I know it's not how they treat my kids. That's not how they treat, obviously, other young or young black men, young people of color, young, trans folks in the neighborhoods. They're always hassling them. So why would you bring that influence in the room where we're supposed to be giving you our honest feedback? I mean, they're probably not going to get my honest feedback because, just like you said, I mean, I live on the street. They probably know where I live. They can look up where I live because I don't have the ability to look up where they live. So, why? I appreciate what you're saying, but that's not my. That's not my issue. That's not my problem. That's their problem. If you want honest input from the community, then you need to you need to keep it a safe space in an area where, an environment where people will speak their minds. And I'm telling you, as an older black man, you bring police up in here, and right then my guard's up. So.
Thank you.
Well, I agree with that. I think that people's guards will go up if the police are there, but I also think that a lot of us, I don't know about you guys, but right now I'm not particularly interested in hearing the police's opinion on it, because it's we always listen to the police opinion over the community opinion. It's they can't. It's we put them on a pedestal, they can't do any wrong, and it's a power imbalance. That's incredibly toxic. It doesn't help anybody. I think that if the police are going to be here, I think it's important for them to be here, but I think that they can't they just need to sit and listen, because nobody knows how to listen. We learned that at the last meeting. Everybody we all got upset. We were we just felt this need to defend ourselves, and I feel if the police are going to be there, they just need to sit and listen, and they need to hear this and hear that people are afraid of them, not even because they're a bad cop, but because they're a cop, and because we're taught from literally from children, we're taught to be afraid of the police. I mean, my dad used to tell me, my mom would always tell me to call the police, and my dad would always sit there with this look on his face I don't think that's right. It's it's just it's different for different people, and from my experience with cops, like, there's this one officer named Officer Mills, and he's probably the only police officer that I would trust at all. Because he makes an effort to talk to people. Like, he came up to I was sitting outside the library with my friends, and like, he just sat there and started talking to us in a way that like, I've never seen a police officer do before. And it's like, that's saying something. I've never had a police officer come up and legitimately just talk to us. Like, as people, not like we're like these like brown kids that are like up to no good in front of the library. Like, he talked to us as people. He was like, what are you doing? And like, like my friend was smoking she was smoking a cigarette, and he came up and he was like, do you know what's in that? And she's like, it's not weed, it's not a problem. And it's like, he was fine with it. Like, he knew her name, she knew his name, and it's like, she just pestered him, and he comes over to Liberty Plaza and he just talks to people there. And then he'll leave and people are like, I like that Officer Mills. Like, there's no relationship with the police in the community. And so I think that like, it's good for them to hear like what people are saying and like our experiences with the police, but then like I've also seen police officers, and it's like they come up and it's like everybody's guard just goes up, and it's like to a certain degree people's guards do go up when Officer Mills is around because he's a police officer and nobody wants to get in trouble for something. But like it's like there's a certain amount of like trust that people have with Officer Mills that I've never seen with any black person in the police officer ever in my life. And it's like he kept like looking at me, and it's because like I was like scrunched up and I was like avoiding eye contact, and I could like see him in the corner of my eye, because it's like that's what I do when police are around. It's like I try to like hide myself, so it's like I'm not in trouble, like they can't get me for anything. And it's like he literally just sat there and he listened to us like ramble until everybody wasn't tense anymore and we were comfortable. And I think that that's like an important relationship to have with the police, and I think that that's something that like we should be pushing for more.
I just wanted to say one thing. I mean, if we really want to reform the police in Ann Arbor, it's not going to happen without Mr. Lazarus's help, as he's the city administrator, as long as he's the administrator. And I'm hearing a lot. I mean, interactions with the police on the street is obviously can be from okay to horrible or deadly, as is the case in Ann Arbor sometimes. I'm just not sure. I mean, it's good to. I want to differentiate beat cops, who are actually the ones that pull you over and the ones that mess with you and the ones that fuck with you, versus, I mean, is this people's thoughts on the two deputy chiefs that are here? I know what my experience is with them, but do people feel uncomfortable when they're attending the meetings?
I think, go ahead, Lauren. I think it sounds like there are a variety of different settings that we need to set up in order to make this happen. So I think it's not that binary, it's not that simple. Sometimes police can be present, sometimes not. The task force may talk with the police, sometimes the community may. I think the task force needs to take this back, all of the diversity of comments, there is not one perspective, and we will figure out the best way in order to figure out all of those different environments. So I really appreciate the comments. Definitely want to hear more, but I think that this is a complex issue. It's a very serious one. It's not that simple, and so it's going to take some dialogue on our part. Cool. Glad that just solved everything. So who would like to close out? You would like to? No, the vote. Did we vote? We voted. We voted. Okay, we're closing. Take it away, Shirley.
I'm closing with a poem.
Great.
In fact, I have 2 poems. People were created to be loved. Things were created to be used. The reason the world is in chaos is because things are being loved and people are being used. Life is not about being rich, being popular, being highly educated, or being perfect. It is about being real, being humble, and being kind. I hope we leave tonight listening to those words and keeping them in our hearts. Thank you.
Email sent. That's it.